Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Mariah Beckman, your host with the Future of Health Now. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Miss Anita Ban. Anita holds a master's in clinical psychology from Tel Aviv University and has established an international reputation as one of the world's leading authorities in finding ways to use movement as a way to communicate with the brain to overcome pain and limitation, to increase vitality. As well, Anita helps children with special needs to reach new levels of performance that often are thought to be impossible. Ms. Ban is the author of the best-selling book, Move into Life, The 9 Essentials for Lifelong Vitality, as well as her latest book, Kids Without Limits. You can also visit Anita's website for more resources at anitbanmethod.com, and I'll show you that link below this post as well. So we're speaking with Ms. Ban today to learn more about her exciting new breakthroughs with brain plasticity, how these proven movement techniques can help make us younger and live happier, healthier brain health lives. So, Anita, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Arai. I'm very happy for this opportunity to have this conversation with you.
Oh, well, it's our pleasure. I'm very excited to hear what you have to share with us today, and I understand that today you're also going to be showing us some actual movement techniques and sharing with us that we can actually practice while listening right now during this interview.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think doing it is the most important part, yes.
Well, that's really exciting. I know I'm excited, and as usual for our interviews, I have my pen and paper handy because I know that I always learn an awful lot each and every time we have the opportunity to speak.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right. So, Anita, how would you like to start off today?
Well, I think I'd like to start off first and foremost by speaking a little bit about the focus of this month of the Future of Health Now, which is brain health. First of all, I love the distinction of brain health. We have many years now people talk about the health of their heart or their digestive system or their muscles, or the skeleton, but the brain has been sort of the invisible thing for many, many years. And brains can definitely be healthier or less healthy. And the good news, Arai, is that we really can have a say in the health of our brain. I think most people are aware that nutrition can have a great influence on the health of our brain, but that's not my focus. My focus is how we can actually communicate with our brain and influence our brain very powerfully in getting it to be healthier. And what is a healthy brain? Well, a healthy brain, again, just like a heart, is a brain that can do its job well. So what's the job of the brain? With the heart, it's pretty easy. We know the muscle has to contract and decontract and pump the blood and all that kind of stuff, and be able to withstand stresses and great efforts and so on. The job of the brain is a very different kind of thing. The brain is not a muscle. The brain is an information system. And what the brain does is it creates order for us in our body and in our ability to perceive the world around us and make sense of what's going on. And the way the brain does that is through the creation of connections and combining different connections, which are called synapses, into patterns. That means that if I want to reach with my hand to get a hold of a glass of water, it's an extremely complex activity that the brain had to figure out how to manage my arm to get there. The same kind of thing is when I talk to you. My brain actually needs to be able to think, which is also a form of movement, and to pull together the elements of the ideas and then translate it into words and then be able to express those words. And it's very easy to see how important the brain is and what the job of the brain is when, for instance, if we look at somebody who had a stroke. So you can have a very active, brilliant, powerful, capable human being, and within no time they are reduced to incredible amount of limitation. They can't move half of their body. They can talk or cannot talk or confuse words. Their thinking is not as good. In no time because of a blood clot in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very important for the people know, or what I have to contribute is that we can, through movement, impact our brain and get it to do its job more fully and better. Basically get a stronger, better brain that has the inclination to create new connections, does it effectively, puts it well into effective patterns, and gives us stronger body, more flexible, brighter, more creative and efficient and accurate mind, and also helps us on our emotional and spiritual level.
Well, wonderful. I think I can say for myself that sounds like an amazing thing, and I know that I'm sure everyone listening to this right now really wants to adopt that, because I know that a lot of us, when we picture aging or growing old, it's not a pleasant sight.
Really not, especially not the way that it's commonly happens. And I love to refer to my father, who is getting close to being 94 years old, and he has been doing my work for many, many years. Has actually taken a full training program and then another half training with me, which is a very intense program. And he's always been a very brilliant man and scientist and inventor, but he's never been athletic. And through this work, he is incredibly mobile, goes down to the floor easily, comes off the floor easily, walks twice a day, about an hour, uses the 9 essentials that I'll mention in a little bit, in his activities, both when he takes his walks, but also when he works on his inventions. He has a very important startup that my brother is running that started 3 years ago. Got funded by Silicon Valley. My brother jokes, he says, he's probably the oldest man ever to be funded by Silicon Valley, venture capitalists, and now he's on his second invention. Never mind the details of that. But he definitely shows what's possible when someone continuously reverses the direction of the movement of the brain from deterioration to growth. And by the way, for the audience, your audience that's interested in science, there is a sequence of research studies that was done on rats that takes them just a few weeks before they are, going to die, and they're unable to, they lose their strength and their dexterity and their ability to go through mazes and so on. So that's also their cognitive abilities. And through the principles that I use in my work, every one of their aging characteristics is reversed.
Wonderful. Now, is that by any chance the research that you and Michael Merzenich have been working towards, or is it related somehow?
Excuse me here. This is done by Michael Merzenich and his team, but this is not a research I've been involved in at all. Okay. Dr. Michael Merzenich and I are going to be doing a pilot study on using my work with people who have had traumatic brain injury, because both I know from experience working with people, and he knows from his understanding of what I do, that it can really have a major breakthrough in rehabilitation when there is a traumatic brain injury situations.
Well, that's wonderful. And just, for everyone listening on the call, Michael Merzenich is definitely one of the leading most authorities in brain plasticity research and development. So, and that is a real great testimony to the power of the work that you're doing, the opportunity that you have to work with him and put those findings and put that experience that you have into some clinical studies and eventually papers.
Absolutely, and I'm very fortunate to have met him, and I'm extremely fortunate that he's very open-minded. And when he heard what I do, excuse me, when he heard what I do, he understood it and actually got very interested. And the part that I really shine the light on with him, because I think that's a missing part that is, I predict, will become very central to all the conversation of brain plasticity, reversal of aging, health, and even for sure for young people to reach new levels of performance and much easier, is the role of movement. And I'd like to say just a few words about the role of movement, and then maybe we can go into taking the listeners through a movement experience.
Wonderful.
And then we can talk more and then do another movement experience. So
Wonderful.
Usually people think about movement only in terms of what is usually labeled physical movement. That means watching our body move, our arms, our legs, our back, moving in space. And usually also think of it in terms of exercise. Movement is everywhere. Thinking is a form of movement. Emotion is a form of movement. Of course, physical movement is a form of movement. And feelings are a form of movement. And movement is at the center. First of all, movement is life. I mean, you really stop moving, we stop moving, we're dead. But also, over the years, working with adults, with high performers, with athletes, musicians, and also with children with special needs, and as young as just a few days or a few weeks old, with sometimes very severe conditions, I realized that the way I say it is, movement is the language of the brain. It's through movement that the brain gets organized. It's through movement that induces the growth of connections I mentioned and the formation of patterns that I mentioned earlier in the interview. But I don't talk about movement, and I don't use movement like exercise in the usual sense, like we're getting on a treadmill and walking, even though that can be very good and very useful and very healthy. But I'm using movement in a different way to wake up the brain and get it to resume doing its job more fully and on a higher level.
Well, that's exciting.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think I know what you're giving here, and that are some very simple definitions to myself and everyone listening here. And I know that, you know, the way in which I first became aware of you and your teachings through one of our partners here at the Future of Health Now was because these very same simple techniques and principles that you're just starting to educate us on, you've actually helped to produce, for all intents and purposes, miraculous results in people. So I just, you know, I want to make sure that everyone listening in on this interview is aware that, you know, what you know you're sharing. It sounds very simple, but from my experience now, looking at, you know, in working with the doctors and the research scientists that we have here at the Future of Health Now, and having a personal interest in the neurosciences myself, what you're demonstrating is really very profound, and I'm really excited that we have the opportunity to be some of the first people to now start to integrate these things, these latest discoveries.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I just want to share something that happened. We got a little baby, 4 weeks old, that there was a devastation at birth. I mean, really a big injury, and in the MRI, pretty much his cerebral cortex on both sides was missing, and he just had fluid, so it was black. And he's been getting, you know, work mostly from my practitioners that I've trained, not from me, in the Anita Ban method. And 8 months or 10 months later, the doctors did another MRI. And I have a student and another person that I collaborate with from Harvard University. And the MRIs showed that the cortex was growing. I mean, it became white. It wasn't black anymore. And actually, she showed it to the head of the neuropediatrics in Harvard Medical School, and they were just shocked because it's not supposed to happen. And we, you know, I'm a practitioner. I don't have access to MRIs, and I don't send my clients to get MRIs and so on unless it seems like it's necessary. And now this baby that was barely able to stay alive, he would choke every few minutes. They would have to, you can't imagine how many tubes went into this kid to keep him alive. And now he started crawling.
Wow.
It's really, it's even for me, I go like, no, not really, but he is. So it shows the enormous potency when we communicate with ourselves, with our brains. Either we do it or somebody does it with us. The principles are very direct and intuitively can make sense to people, but they also go against both a lot of our belief systems and what we've been told for many years should work, and require a certain degree of personal evolution to be willing to do things in a very different way. So, for example, my first essential, I have 9 essentials that if we apply them as we move, either with our bodies or our thinking or our emotions, if we apply them, we immediately wake up the brain, and it starts creating new connections very, very rapidly, and research also verifies that. So the very first essential is movement with attention. And right now I'm just going to focus on so-called physical movement because that's the easiest way to demonstrate it and direct people to do it. And movement is, as I said, the language of the brain. But movement alone is not enough. Movement alone just grooves in the existing patterns more deeply. When we bring attention to what we feel as we move, that is like very, very important. So I'll say it again. It's not just noticing and paying attention to what we do, the movement that we do, but what we feel as we move.
Wonderful. So
that is what gets the brain to, in children, research shows estimated 1.8 million new connections per second, about 100 million a minute.
Wow. So that even right there, although it's as simplistic as it gets, movement while paying attention to the feeling while we're moving really is one of our tangible to-dos here. The very first one, in fact, that you shared. And I know, just to recap, for those, we have, Annette has, obviously you contributed here before, Annette, and you did go into great length and detail on these 9 essentials, but it's always so refreshing just to have a reminder of them.
Yes, absolutely, because also when we go into the movement lessons that I'll guide people, it's important that move with a lot of attention to what you feel, that you go slow, that you reduce the effort. We'll just start with those 3. That alone will be very powerful, and people can listen to the original interview and get more detail about the essentials. So let's go. The first. So we talk about in terms of myths, and I think the first myth now, people it's been already demystified, which is that as we get older, our brain can only go downhill, that we just get worse. We lose connections, which we do, but then that means it will only go downhill. This is a half true and half myth. It's true, depends what we do. So if we just keep living life, mostly being on automatic, not bringing in the 9 essentials, not eating well, whatnot, then it is true. We will deteriorate because that's the nature of the brain. The brain is built to create habits, and it will just keep doing what it already knows to do, and it'll do it more and more, groove it in more deeply, and not do anything new, and actually lose differentiation. That means we get stiffer and more clunky, and we never do anything new. It's a myth if we start using in my world, the essentials and the movement lessons that we offer, and that immediately reverses, takes away pain. I mean, the changes are really fast. That's one of the things about the brain. It is a quantum system. It's not like one brick on top of the other, on top of the other. It's transformational. It's when it gets the information it needs, it just shifts. And it does something very different. So
wow.
and then another myth I want to point out before the movement, a little movement lesson that I want to focus, the main myth in terms of the body and feeling well and powerful and vibrant and, free to breathe fully, that is what I call the flat stomach myth. So it has been promoted now for quite a while that to be strong, we need to have really, really strong abs, and we need to hold the abs contracted all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So people call it
six-pack abs, a flat, they call
it a flat stomach. I mean,
yeah.
to pull the belly in, some people refer to it as core.
Mm-hmm. Your core strength.
Yeah, the core. I mean, core strength is one thing, but people mean by core strength sometimes simply anything they do, they just pull the belly in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, if you just go to physiology and neurophysiology 101, immediately one can understand that that's not the case. Mm-hmm. It is true that the most powerful muscles in our body are the muscles that are attached to our pelvis. So I call the pelvis the power center.
Okay.
But the most powerful muscles in that power center that get us up and get us to be able to jump or kick or punch powerfully are the back muscles. The glutes, the back muscles, these are the most powerful muscles that are what I call the primary anti-gravity muscles that keep us up. The abdomen muscles need to be alive and able to contract depending what movement we do. Then there's also diagonal muscles, or in other words, if we move it back to the brain level, we need to map all the muscles in our body in general, but the muscles in this case today, we're talking about the pelvis, we need to connect the brain to all of those muscles so the brain can contract the muscles that need to be contracted depending what movement we do.
Wow.
If we primarily focus on the abdominals and just contract them and do lots of sit-ups and that's all we do, we weaken ourselves actually. We disorganize the spine and the back. We're more likely eventually to injure ourselves to back. I've worked with, baseball players, a pitcher that, was told to do lots and lots and lots and lots of sit-ups. And, of course, his shoulder got injured because the way the force traveled through the body was the wrong way. He was still a fantastic athlete, but he kept getting injured.
It's amazing.
So,
I always find how amazing in that the information that someone like yourself has as a practitioner out in the marketplace working with your patients or with your clients, you have these great insights which you think to professional sports like professional baseball, especially one of the biggest sports and favorite pastimes of the United States, that these professional athletes getting paid sometimes millions of dollars a year would already know these things, but really these are such profound new discoveries that people like you are pioneering in your practices that it's not commonplace.
Absolutely, and thanks for this observation, because you'd think everybody would know it, but beliefs and traditions are very, very strong, and very often it's very hard. Facts don't have the power necessary to change beliefs, but it is changing, because here you have me. And people will listen. And when we talk about brain health, when we just keep harping on just a small set of movements and trying to strengthen just one set of muscles in one set of directions or a couple set of directions, actually we create imbalance in our brain. A healthy brain is a brain that can go anywhere it needs to at any time. That means it has the least amount of compulsion and the maximum amount of freedom to create and problem solve on the spot. So let me give you a very concrete example how that translates.
Okay.
You take a young person and they're walking down the street and there's a little dip in the road. And so the foot all of a sudden just kind of like drops down unexpectedly. And they just very quickly rearrange themselves and keep walking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not a big deal. That's a brain that didn't expect it to happen, but the moment it got the sensation coming, from the body, it immediately went like, and it put it back up, and it kept walking.
Mm-hmm.
You take somebody that's older, that's been limited in what they've done during their life, and by the way, a lot of people that do a lot of those sit-ups, and as they get older, you see them get really rigid, and they start shuffling because their lower back is like not even probably represented hardly in their brain anymore. And then something like this happens, and they just fall because they have no resources to work with, and the brain is very sluggish.
There's one thing in that I haven't heard before myself when I've been listening to your interviews. Now I'm on the front lines, if you will, having the pleasure to interview you myself on behalf of everyone listening. And had never understood this before myself, and so I just want to really draw attention to it. So what you're expressing to us is that every time that we're actually doing a movement with ease, effortlessness, paying attention to how it feels, we're actually starting to communicate more profoundly between the brain and that muscle group. And essentially what you're saying is the more we can do that with obviously the more, the better, but as well, maybe starting from the ground up with the major muscle groupings, the more the brain is actually mapping, if you will, a communication pattern throughout the body, which will not only serve us now, which will not only help our brains to be healthier now, but also well into the future as we continue to, if you will, not actually age as much as other people might in our brains.
Absolutely, and the mapping is a literal mapping. I mean, there is like a representation of the brain in the motor cortex and in the sensory cortex. So let's say if somebody is born without an arm, that arm doesn't exist in that brain because it's not there and it's not moving. And it's through the movement and the sensation and the feeling, sensations that movement creates and the outcomes that we get, like push, pull, hit something, so on, but it gets mapped. It literally gets mapped in the brain. So when I work, for instance, with a child that has had injury to the nerve, it's called brachial plexus, that innervates the arm, and the arm is paralyzed, but they don't really move it because there's some injury to the nerve, but the nerve is not severed, and everything else in this little infant, kind of twitches and moves around and so on, but that arm is lying inert. At that time, that arm is not getting. It doesn't exist for the brain. It doesn't exist for the child. It's through movement and the feeling of the movement, and another one of my essentials is, of course, variation. Great degree of variation. It literally gets mapped. There's like real estate taken in the brain for that area. So when we want to, very often in the beginning when I work with people, and let's say somebody says, this part doesn't move or not flexible enough or it hurts me, and I go totally somewhere else in their body, moving them, and they think maybe I didn't hear them right. Mm-hmm. And they tell me again, no, this is the part that hurts. I say, I heard you, I get that. But I know that they've used it in an imbalanced way, so I have to get other parts to get represented and integrated into that movement, into what they do, so that the pain goes away and they perform better. It is a literal thing. And the health of a healthy brain is a brain that innervates, continues to create new connections, and that's the big breakthrough. And by the way, Professor Dr. Michael Merzenich was the guy that began that revolution through his research in, I think, late 60s or whenever that was. He didn't expect to find it. It was believed that it's not possible. And he went and did some research on apes and realized their brain is changing in response to their experiences. And the brain is the most responsive organ. It changes the fastest of all organs. It deals with it works with basically information, and we have to give it what it takes for it to get information. And I'm just going to say that, and then we're going to go into a movement lesson.
Okay,
and
wonderful.
That is that the source of information, and that was something that took me years to really get clear about. I was doing it, but to kind of, conceptualize it clearly to myself. The source of information for the nervous system is a perception of a difference. Until I perceive a difference, it doesn't exist for me. So if I work really hard and do the same movement over and over again, I'm really starving my brain of new information. And that is the way in which we drive our brains towards aging very, very quickly.
Wonderful. Well, that's a very profound statement, and I think it's one of the only times that we've heard so far at the Future of Health Now that we can actually splurge, if you will, or binge on anything, which is what you're saying is new information, giving the brain new information. The old, repetitive, stagnant, more rigid movements that we would do over and over again that you see most people doing in most gyms working out are actually potentially, if done, too much so over long periods of time, are detrimental to them and their brains, and you're encouraging us to go to the exact opposite end of that spectrum, which I think is very profound because there are not many people teaching this right now.
Absolutely. Now, everybody that deals with brain change and all your speakers, they know that we need variations, we need to do new things. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that we need to create new connections in the brain. But what gets the brain to do that? What drives the brain to wake up and start doing it? Knowing that we need to do it is one thing, but having it done is another thing. And the way to drive the brain towards new growth and reversing the path towards aging, the trajectory of aging, into a trajectory of greater vitality and, strength and skill and well-being, is providing the brain with new information. And the new information comes to the brain through perception of differences. And all the 9 essentials, each and every one of them, supports the ability, the skill of the brain to perceive differences, the opportunity for the brain to get new information. So shall we?
Yes. Yeah, I'd love to. We shall.
Okay. So how about we just do a few-minute movement lesson that will begin with focusing on the power center of the body, which is the pelvis and the muscles that connect to the pelvis, and start introducing to it the kind of variation and mapping it and giving it the freedom and the representation that people can feel right away changes in themselves in general, and then if they do things. And
that sounds great.
Okay, so we'll start sitting in a chair because probably a lot of people are watching, a computer screen, right, doing this. Because eventually I'd also like to do it when people can lie down, but this one will start in sitting.
Okay, wonderful.
So sit at the edge of the chair, so you're not leaning on the back of the chair. That's very important. And spread your feet and knees comfortably, about pelvis width, and put your feet flat on the floor. If anybody's wearing thick shoes or high heels, it'll be a lot better if you're able to simply have, the feet can be in socks, that's not a problem, or barefoot. And now we're going to do a simple movement first to just get a sense of something later on. So it's kind of like a baseline movement to compare. And lift your right arm up towards the ceiling and just lower it. And just feel what it feels like. How far it goes, how it feels to lift it, and so on. And then lift the left arm up towards the ceiling. And for many people, one arm feels easier, and sometimes people have a little pain in their shoulder. By the way, if you have pain, very important. Let me just say how to go about doing this lesson. So first of all, I'm going to ask you to move slowly. I'm going to ask you to move gently. That means don't force. Don't put a lot of effort into your movement. Do just what's easy, because remember, you're talking to your brain, and it's not on the muscular level. It's on the brain information level. So do it easy. Excuse me, light, slow, And so now, and if you feel pain, do less. And if there's still pain, stop doing the movement and do it in your imagination. That's one of my essentials. So now, so you lift your left arm up as however far it's easy and bring it back down. And do this movement gently, maybe again, lift it up and put it down. And lift the right one up again just to now, and feel what it's like. Remember, it's movement with attention to what you feel. And feel just if it feels easy, hard, you like it, you don't like it. And now, just to give you an immediate demonstration of the whole idea of the flat stomach and always having the stomach contracted, pull your belly in really powerfully. I mean, get the as flat a stomach as you know to get, and keep it really contracted. Don't let go of the muscles. And now lift your right arm and feel what that's like. And feel whether if your stomach muscles are really contracted, all of a sudden it's much harder to lift the right arm.
Yeah, it is. I just tried to raise my right arm, and it's as if I had a small weight on it.
Exactly, and it doesn't go as far, and if you push it, it'll start hurting in the shoulder. And then do the same thing in the left arm. And by the way, that explains to you how come so many of the baseball players get the shoulder injuries.
Well, that makes perfect sense. As you mentioned
earlier,
I mean,
it's such a simple change. You know, will save them. So many players, give them such longer careers and tons of money, save them. But one day it will all happen. So now, so that was just the beginning. Now we're going to leave the arms alone. You're going to put them, on your side somewhere very, very easily, and you're going to simply. I'm going to ask you to actually pull your belly in and let your pelvis roll backwards. You see your lower back rounds, your whole spine rounds. So let yourself like slouch like that and feel how the weight travels backwards on your pelvis, on your sit bones. And now come back to where you started. And then again, pull the belly in and let the pelvis roll back, but let the whole spine round. So let the chest go down. Really sit really poorly. Slouch, 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 right? And give yourself permission to do that because that's a totally legitimate and actually important movements when you need to move that way and come back. And now pull the belly in again and feel whether the pressure is equal on the right hip and sit bones is on the left. And for most people, one side is actually sitting more clearly on the chair than the other. Mm-hmm. And do the movement maybe one more time, really slowly, and then bring yourself back and just sit there for a second, doing nothing. Just feel how you're sitting. Feel how the weight distributes through your sit bones and your pelvis on the right and the left. And feel the way your feet are touching the floor. And feel the feeling in the neck and the head. You'll see that what we do will, of course, impact the neck and the shoulders because they are connected. And now, from where you sit, do the following. Actually push your belly out. Free your belly and actively push it out. You can put your hand on your belly and roll the pelvis forward. So the weight drives forwards towards the front of your sit bones and then come back to place, to the neutral where you started. And then again, that's a movement that's a lot harder for people to do, especially those who have been holding their belly in for a long time. So go very slow and very small until you actually feel that you can put one hand on your belly so that you feel that you're really freeing the belly and you're not pushing the chest forward and up. Very often people confuse their chest with their belly. And to make it even easier, lean on both hands on the back of your chair, on the seat of the chair, so that it takes away some of the work of your back muscles and your belly muscles. And now, in this position, keep leaning. Actually, you lean more on the hands as you roll the pelvis forward, arch your lower back gently, and then let it go. And then again, roll the pelvis forward, arch the back, lean on the hands clearly behind you, and come back. And next time you do it, notice whether when you roll the pelvis forward like that you actually grow taller. It's as if the spine shoots from in between the shoulder blades.
Yeah, I actually felt my neck relax, and I felt as if I sat up more straighter.
Yeah, taller. It's because if you lean on your hands, you're not really straight because you're leaning backwards. But when you arch your lower back, it lengthens the spine. That's the action of getting upright. And now let's combine the two movements. So keep leaning on the hands behind you and pull the belly in and round the back and let the chest, collapse and feel how the head tends to sink in between the shoulders, right? The neck gets shorter, disappears a bit. And then free your belly. Stop contracting it, roll the pelvis forward, lean on the hands behind, and feel how you get taller, and then pull the belly in and roll the pelvis backwards and round your back, and then free the belly, roll the pelvis forward. And now let's go, don't lean on the hands anymore, and simply sit at the edge of the chair the way you've been doing, all along. And feel how you're sitting. And feel if something has changed in the sense of sitting. For me, I'm doing the lesson myself as I'm giving the instructions. And for me, again and again, when I do this, comes the image of statues of Buddha sitting. If you look especially at the traditional, some of the new Buddha statues give him a flat stomach, which is kind of like crazy, hilarious. But if you look at the traditional Buddha statues, he always has a wonderful, round, healthy belly.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention next time. You cannot reach enlightenment with a tight belly because a tight belly goes together with anxiety. It's actually part of the biological pattern of anxiety. People don't know that. And Buddha, when he reached enlightenment, he was not having an anxiety attack, that's for sure. So.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I know I'm hearing a little bit more about that recently. My wife is a professional martial artist, and she's also a singer. And her professional martial art, you're kind of bent over a lot of time doing a very standard, rhythmic, routinized movement. It's pretty much the same thing every time. Now, it's not as rigid. It's more of an acrobatic dance that she does. But she actually found, just from rolling out a number of knots, actually in her abdomen, that she'd found that she'd sort of gained, collected over the years of doing physical activity professionally. She felt that she was completely and totally relieved of anxiety that she'd been holding with her and bringing with her, she felt, the majority of her life.
Wow. Wonderful insight. And if she even does this lesson, it'll help her martial arts hugely because, again, traditional martial artists, it's the hara, it's the power in the center, and it's the belly is free. Animals in nature, when they roar, when a lion roars, his diaphragm is pushed out. I mean, actually the belly expands.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that was just to point it out. That was the second thing I think we've ever. The first time we've ever heard anything twice now at the Future of Health. Now, no one before has said have a deep, full, round belly for maximum health.
Yes.
And I know what you're encouraging us to do is to breathe deeply into the abdomen. I find that even myself, just having done that exercise, my abdomen's more relaxed. I'm able to breathe more easily.
Yeah.
I can speak to you with more resonancy throughout my whole being.
Yeah, exactly. So now let's do a little bit more. So now lean only on lean on both hands, actually, behind you.
Okay.
And this time, what you're going to do is you're going to put a little bit of pressure on your left foot, and you're going to roll your pelvis. So you have to free the belly and lift a little bit the left hip and bring more of the weight onto the right hip. So you roll your pelvis. So before we roll the pelvis forward and backwards. Now we are rolling the pelvis sideways, but with we're arching the left side of our lower back.
Okay.
So we're
shifting our weight from the left to the right side.
Yes, but not by moving the shoulders. You see, if you pull your belly in and and shift the weight to the left, you see you have to move your head and your shoulders and everything shift your weight to the right, you have to move everything to the right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you arch your back and press on the left foot a little bit, you bring the weight over to the right, but the head can stay in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So do it that way, just a few times. So you push the belly in, you rotate the pelvis a little bit like that, and bring the weight over to the right. And now, by the way, stop and rest for a second and feel how now the left side of your pelvis sits compared to the right, and feel if the left now sits a little deeper into the chair. Maybe yes, maybe no. Can you feel that?
It feels, for me right now personally, no. But I want to make sure I'm doing the exercise properly just as a listener. So what I'm doing is my hands reached up behind me, and I'm leaning some weight on my hand. I'm contracting my belly. Is that correct?
No, you're pushing your belly out.
Okay, so when you say arch your back, you mean breathe into your belly, push it out, arch your back. Okay, and then I apply a little bit of pressure to my left foot, trying to raise my pelvis.
You raise your left side of your pelvis, your left hip, and you get also more weight on your left arm.
Okay, wonderful.
And let's try it again then. That's so good that you're clarifying, because we don't have the visuals. So can you feel now how the pelvis actually rotates a little bit? It's as if you want to bring your belly button over your right thigh.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm experiencing it. So now that I relax, I can feel it's as if muscle groupings in my pelvis on the left side have relaxed even more so, and I do feel as if I'm sitting deeper.
Exactly. That means you see how quickly it happens? It's like literally in your motor and sensory cortex and everything, there is more connection now to that, and when you stop acting, the brain lets go and organizes you more on that side because it's better represented and it's higher quality. And now let's do it to the other side. So, and people might feel big difference from side to side, especially if they have some scoliosis or something. So don't worry about it, but just do it small and gentle and easy, and put a little bit of pressure on your right foot and right arm, and push the belly out as if you want your belly button to come over your left side this time. And feel, by the way, that doing this movement also makes you taller. So you don't pull the belly in, and pay attention to that, because so many people, I've taught now tens of thousands of people, and this is one of the things I teach in any of my workshops and trainings and seminars, because this is like, without this, so much else cannot happen. So I teach that very early on, and so many people pull the belly in thinking they're relaxing it and pushing it out. So you can even watch your belly and see, are you pulling it in or not, and do a few movements like that. And now sit and rest, and just feel now whether both sides of your tush are much more solid. You're much more solid into the chair, and your head shoots up easier. Can you feel that?
Yeah, I can. I feel much more relaxed. And
you feel your shoulders actually tend to drop down? That means the neck is more relaxed?
It feels like I'm just dropping more naturally into the natural posture.
Absolutely. And now do the following. Pull your belly in, roll the pelvis back, and then push the belly out and roll the pelvis forward, and feel if now that movement, I can feel doing it, much more of my spine is participating, and it got softer, smoother to do. Can you feel that?
Oh, much easier. There's no comparison. It's like, for me, it's a night and day difference.
Wonderful. And now just sit for a second and just feel what you feel like and what it's like to just sit there. And if now, for instance, you wanted to meditate, how much easier it would be to sit still and meditate. Because the brain got calmer. It got more evenly, the whole excitation, inhibition, all that stuff got more evenly distributed, and you're creating new connections. And that's what I call a happy brain. That's the most important brain food aside from actual food.
So let me just recap for everyone listening in. So Annette, you just walked us through some very simple exercises just over the course of a few minutes. Before that, you shared with us the knowledge and the new understanding that brain research and neuroscience is bringing to the forefront, which is that the more awareness we have and the more engagement we give to our brain, the more we slow down with ease and effort with our movements, the healthier of a brain we can have, the more dynamic we can be. And then you just demonstrated to us through these very simple movements the experience we can have afterwards, which can be greater calmness, more relief, a greater sense of peace. And that's ultimately, if I'm understanding you correctly, that's our demonstration and the sign that our brain is acting more effectively, more efficiently, and therefore it's healthier. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And it's healthier because it's doing its job. Yes, absolutely. You literally wake it up and get it to create new connections and work more harmoniously and more effectively. Because the unhealthy brain is a brain that's rigid, that has limited number of patterns that it does over and over again, and it doesn't have the ease of responding and changing according to the demands of life, basically.
That makes sense.
Want
so that makes sense. What you're saying to me now, and I understand this, is the majority of us have a monotonous, routinized, very standard life. We sit down at home and we either watch television or have conversations with others, but we're typically always sitting in the same manner. I noticed here in the West we sit on chairs a lot of the time. In the East they're more so on the floor, on rugs, on cushions, a little bit more dynamic. There's a little bit more movement there. We go then to our cars and we sit down, and then we go to the office typically and we're sitting down in the same position constantly.
Yeah, I absolutely. The thing is, though, it's okay to sit in chairs. I mean, I don't think we have to go down to the floor. And by the way, people can sit in the floor and get pretty, compulsive and rigid about how they do that
pretty
too.
As well.
So it's not so much what you do, it's how you do. So if people sit in chairs, by the way, there's one thing that I would love to bring in now is sit because that's going back to our base movement. Now, round your back. So let's do just one more movement where you pull your belly in and you round your back. You're still sitting at the edge of the chair, and now, but you're not leaning on your hands. And then roll the pelvis forward and lift the right arm up, and feel whether the arm lifts differently.
Well, it most certainly went way higher, more
exactly.
effortless.
Yeah, so again, roll your pelvis back, pull the belly in, and now roll the pelvis forward and, arch your back and lift the arm and feel how different it is. So you see how that can be useful. And now let's just do it with the left arm to make sure it works with both arms.
Okay.
So roll the pelvis backwards, pull your belly in, and then lift your left arm up and see if that arm also lifts easier.
The same result. It's much easier. And this is interesting, the contrast from the beginning when we first do this exercise till now.
Yeah. And now we lift our arms and use our arms and drive and cook and all the time. So when we get the power center free to move backwards and forwards and sideways and in all directions, in all the movements that we do, we will become stronger, more flexible, freer. And this is just, a sequence of basically 6 movements. Now, there are hundreds of other sequences we could do, but here is one example of how you immediately engage your brain, you immediately give it the opportunity through movement to perceive differences and reorganize you at a higher level with new information. And that's the health of the brain.
Wow.
This is it. I mean, it can't
right
go
here.
much further.
Yeah.
Healthy muscles are muscles that contract and decontract well. Healthy hearts, they pump well. Healthy digestion is the digestive system that digests well. A healthy brain is a brain that puts order and organizes our movement and thoughts and feelings and emotions well, creatively, freely.
Well, that's very profound, and I'm really grateful to have you and to have the opportunity here for you to share this, these learnings from your experience. And I know that you've helped just so many people in that through your courses, and as we mentioned before, you have this amazing website full of resources, and you have these tremendous books that you've created. And I know that this is, for anyone listening to this interview, this is not just applicable to you right now listening. It's also applicable to your family members, children. And one of the things that I'm very just grateful to understand, Anat, that you're doing with your work is you really are helping children with special needs. And oftentimes one of the lines that we mentioned in your biography was that you help them to achieve performance that's often thought impossible. And that's tremendous. You're literally changing their lives, and it's even greater testimony to everyone else listening as well. Like, if there's anything I feel that just the experience I've had in so very short a period of time in that, I'm assuming the results that we'll get will only continue to improve for every one of us.
I love that you say that, because that actually is a very important commentary. The way it works is when it builds upon itself. Mm-hmm. So if you bring these few principles, movement with attention, variation, slow down, reduce the force, into washing dishes, just 5 minutes, and then just go back to semi-automatic, right? Mm-hmm. Or to your routine in the gym. Slow down if you're going to go on a treadmill, take it really slow, and so you don't risk falling and so on, and start paying attention, and then start maybe putting 1 foot more in and 1 foot more out. Look with the head one way, look with the head the other way. Lift one arm for a few minutes when you walk. Pull the belly in when you do it, pull the belly out. Do it on one side, feel the difference to the other side. Then do it on the other side. Do that it doesn't take long to introduce these kind of variations and slowing down all that stuff. Do that for 5-6 minutes, then just go and do your usual routine, and you'll see how much better you get on the spot. You get more stamina, you get less injuries. So you don't even have to do anything formal. You can just be creative, or, you can go and, do lessons in the method, and, of course, that's very powerful, too. Mm-hmm. The children, the more I do this work, the more I actually get both surprised and inspired by it. So, for instance, because of the book, Kids Beyond Limits, now we get people coming from all over the world, even more than before. So we have this young couple with a 2-year-old girl from Russia that had meningitis early on and started moving, does a crawl, just beginning to stand, but does not eat and does not talk and does not do anything cognitive, like she doesn't hold a crayon and draw or put blocks. And so her movement is limited, but she is developing, but on the whole, she's very behind. Now, they have been here a week, and I started working with a girl. Now my other practitioners are working with her. And by the 3rd day, she spontaneously picked up a crayon and started drawing on a piece of paper. The
wow.
parents, couldn't
that
believe it.
That must have been so overwhelming for her parents.
Yeah, and I'm also saying it to the adult audience, because when you do this work, when you get a healthier brain, when you get a brain that's awake and feeling and perceiving differences, you will find improvement in your cognition, in your memory, in your emotional vitality. It's not in one place. It's the whole brain works better. And then the next day, for the first time, she spontaneously organized blocks, one on top of the other, and you can imagine that the parents have been trying to get her to do it for a while now. Mm-hmm. And the after the following, we give her 2 lessons a day. The following lesson, she started vocalizing a lot more.
Wow.
I mean, every lesson, just like breakthrough. And one of my practitioners is also a speech therapist, and this girl is, not been eating, and she's just given her 1 or 2 lessons, and the parent says that it's an explosion of sounds, just an explosion of sounds. And it's just hard to describe. A child on the autism spectrum, 3-year-old, that also we got first time last week, and I think it was from Canada, and because we are in California, Northern California, and the kid, by the end of the 5 days, which is 10 lessons, was saying words, 2, sometimes 3, and not just imitate. He hardly said any words, but if he did, it was like he would repeat what somebody said. Mm. And looking at the eyes, and happier and less anxiety, and it's all done through movement. But when you use movement the way we just started, applying today, you really engage the cognition, the mind, the attention. So you really bring forth and help grow the intelligence. And it works for adults as well as children. And it's really staggering how effective it is. So I believe that given you, people like you, Arai, and the internet and so on, and the speed at which human consciousness now changes and evolves, I think that in a few years this is going to be like general knowledge.
Wonderful. Well, that is definitely our goal here at the Future of Health Now, and I'm really grateful to have you here, as I've said multiple times throughout the call and out, but I personally have experienced just how profound your teachings are, and I know that those who have listened to this interview so far that have followed along with these movement techniques, probably have also experienced some benefit for themselves too. And before we finish and wrap up today, I just wanted to make it known that this is actually just going to be the first part in a series on that. So we're going to have you come back over the next few months, and we'll be sharing more with everyone listening about Anat and everything that she has going on with her work, and some amazing, powerful resources that she's going to also make available to everyone here at the Future of Health Now. And so, Anat, I sincerely appreciate.
And you know it, right?
Yes.
And more movement lessons. So
and more movement lessons.
I think the next one we can bring the movement lesson a little sooner, because people would have already heard, hopefully, this part in the very first interview. Mm-hmm. So I could just refer to the essentials, but I don't have to explain them so much. So that'd be really great.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree with you, and totally hear that loud and clear. And I know that everyone will appreciate that as well. And thank you very much, however, though, for giving us the brief foundation that you did, so that we can understand it properly, contextually from the outset.
Well, thank you so much, Arai. It's a pleasure, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be in touch soon. So, Anat Ban, thank you very much once again for all the work that you're doing to help make the lives of our listeners healthier and happier now and well into the future. My name is Arai Beckman, and thank you very much for listening to the Future of Health Now.